welcome to the live show. Little technology glitch that happens. LinkedIn doesn't quite have the platform down like Facebook. So,
we were in panic mode there.
yeah. So hopefully, good thing we didn't say anything bad, right? Could you imagine?
I'm pretty sure that I swore.
All right. Are we seeing any comments yet or no?
No comments yet.
All right. If anybody, whoever's on, if you could just tell us something so that we can see the comments. Okay, all right, so comments here. If you guys could just comment, and then we'll be able to see them. Let us know that you're able to see and hear what we're saying. All right, so thanks for watching. I'm with Robert Siciliano. We're coming to you live from Boston. And the other morning, I got a message from one of the companies that I do business with, and it had a link in there. And you know, I don't just click on stuff. So before clicking on the link, there we go. All right, we're in. We have comments.
Hey, Mike.
Before clicking on the link, I pick up the phone and I call this guy, and I say, "Hey, did you just send me something in LinkedIn in a message?" Because it was part of the normal thread, right? So we'd been having conversations back and forth through LinkedIn. But he says, "No, I didn't send it to you." I said, "Well, you better log into your LinkedIn then." And when he went to log into his LinkedIn, he wasn't able to because somebody hacked into his system and they changed the password. And then they sent messages out to everybody that he's connected with. So it would have been very easy for me to just click on the link. My system would have been compromised. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Paulo.
So now I think it's important that when we talk about somebody hacked into his LinkedIn, what that means, and most people should know this, but what that means when he hacked in is that he just logged in. Like, LinkedIn is unlikely to get hacked in a way where criminals are going to access their servers and get in through the back door and be able to get to various accounts. I mean, certainly that does happen. Whether it's happened with LinkedIn or not, I'm not really sure. But usually what hacked means is they logged in, which meant that they got his password. Yeah. They got his password either because he's using the same password across 20 different accounts, and that password was compromised on another account from another data breach using the same username, which is often a email address, and the same password for, say, 10, 20 different critical accounts: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Visa, MasterCard, American Express. And once they have one login, they do what's called credential stuffing, and they use automated software to try, say, the top 100 most critical websites that are out there, yeah, and they're going to get in. They use automated software to use those known credentials that are on data breaches that they download, and they just log in, take over those accounts, mimic you, and contact friends, family. You know, I'm in the UK, I lost my wallet, I got mugged, I need you to wire me $2,500, please help me. And somebody may just, you know, wire that money.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, a friend of mine's brother sent money to somebody.
Yep, that happens. I mean, I see it all the time. You know, people want to help. You know, bad guys prey upon our giving nature, and once you know, they log into our accounts, they pose as us in distress. Whether it's the grandparent scam, whether it's, you know, a phishing expedition that goes out to somebody within a company, HR, PR, you know, accounting, a company officer saying, "Pay this bill." People just, you know, they're just doing their jobs. They pay the bill. Next thing you know, $100,000 is wired out of the account to a criminals overseas, usually in the Eastern Bloc. I mean, it is that simple and that common.
Now, Robert's been doing this for a very long time. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I've been involved in information security as it pertains to personal security, which is protecting your identity, protecting your person from violence and theft, both in the physical and virtual worlds. Since I was in my early 20s, my small business got hacked in 1995, thousands of dollars worth of credit card fraud. That woke me up to black hat hacking. And when it happened, I lost thousands of dollars, and in 1995, that was a lot of money to me. But as upset as I was, as awful as it was, to me it was awesome. Like, it was awesome that they could do that. I wanted to know how they did it. I reverse engineered their process, and I dug deep to find out, what this is all about. And shortly thereafter, I learned about identity theft and using a social security number to open up new lines of credit under people's names. And I saw it then, and I see it now as the absolute perfect crime. And, so for 25 years, I have been researching every aspect of this issue, and here we are, 20 billion records compromised just in the past 4 or 5 years alone. It is getting worse. It is not getting any better. They say all the time that hackers are getting more sophisticated, which they really aren't. They're just getting more organized, right? They're more organized today than ever. And the issue more than anything is that consumers are no smarter today regarding digital literacy revolving around cybersecurity. They're no more literal today than they were a decade ago. And that's why they're winning in many aspects.
People don't take it seriously because, like you said, it's a syndrome. They don't think it can happen to them.
They don't want to think it can happen to them. Security is one of those things that is not something that we want to think about. We don't want to care about. We equate security with being paranoid, right? And nothing could be further than the truth. Security is not about paranoia. If you've ever met anybody who's paranoid, and I've met plenty, paranoia, as you know, is mental illness. That is somebody who is diseased. And somebody who is diseased, mentally ill, they're out of control, right? Security is the complete opposite. It's all about being in control. But when people think about security, they say, well, I don't want to live like that. Like, a lot of people don't even lock their doors. Many people don't have home security systems. And they think when it comes to home security systems and locking their doors, and I've even had people in my life say this to me, I don't want to live like that. Meaning like that they don't want to live paranoid. And nothing could be further from the truth. These are cultural myths that have been perpetrated over decades by people who simply don't take the necessary effort and energy to learn about what security is, to appreciate the value that it provides in our lives and in our businesses. And they just perpetuate this myth that, it can't happen to me. I don't want to be paranoid. Therefore, they do nothing about it. And they function in a state of denial. And denial, of course, is avoiding the truth. And the truth is that bad things do happen. The likelihood of you being hacked today is far greater than ever. The likelihood of your home being burglarized, about 2 million houses are burglarized every single year.
Wow.
2 million a year. So that's 20 million in the next decade. So like not doing things like having a home security system, not investing in antivirus, anti-spyware, anti-phishing, and a firewall, not having identity theft protection. These are, in my opinion, like fundamentals that if you're not engaged in, then you're simply just gambling that it's not going to happen to you. You don't care about it, or you just want to watch Dancing with the Stars and forget about it all. And that just does not work today.
And the thing is, as a car dealership, okay, your dealership is kind of like a bank, right? Like an ATM machine. Because a lot of dealerships that have been in business for a long time, you have everything that an identity thief would want.
Oh, yeah.
You have all of the data.
Social security numbers, credit card information, PII, personal identifying information, much of it being sensitive information. And if you're not engaged in IT professionals, managed security service providers, either on the inside or third parties used on the outside, to make sure that your networks are properly protected 24/7, 365, it is just a matter of time until the bad guys get in, a data breach occurs, and right now, when a data breach occurs, each compromised record can cost anywhere from $150 to $250 per record in legal fees, in fines, in paying for credit monitoring, in class action lawsuits. It's getting pretty nasty.
Reputation damage.
Reputation damage. It's kind of funny with the reputation damage part. I do agree with that, and it is true. But it's funny, like, we're still shopping at Home Depot. We're still shopping at Target. Although
And they had major breaches.
major breaches,
Yeah.
but still, it is definitely a stain, and they still make the news. And right here, we're talking about it. You know, we're talking about Home Depot and Target and many others. You know, Equifax, they paid millions. That's really the ultimate problem, is that data breaches that happen to small or medium businesses, that can bankrupt them. I mean, it can
Absolutely.
cost them so much money. And cyber security insurance, as necessary as it is, and everybody should have it if you're a small business, just because you have it, that does not necessarily mean that you are okay if you do have a breach, because if your systems aren't up to date, like for example, if you have outdated antivirus, if you're working on a Windows XP machine, if you're in a Windows
Or even Windows 7
if you're in
now.
a Windows 7 machine, it's outdated as of January of 2020.
Yeah.
The insurance company will look at you and say, well, you're out of compliance as far as we're concerned. The first thing that happens when there's a data breach and you have cybersecurity insurance is the insurance company hires forensics experts to come in, and they do a forensics scan on your networks, a vulnerability scan, and they determine where the breach occurred, why it occurred, how it occurred, where the flaw, where the compromise was. And if once they do a system analysis and they determine that basically you are not in compliance in regards to what you signed up for cybersecurity insurance,
Yeah.
that you're outdated and out of whack, they're not going to cover you. And I'm of the firm belief that insurance companies look at every single claim as how they can disqualify you first,
Yeah.
and then if they have to, they qualify you.
Now, and here's the beauty of car dealerships, okay? Car dealerships oftentimes are reluctant to invest the monies that they need to invest in making sure that their networks are secure. I can't tell you how many dealerships I've been into where we've done a network analysis and we find out that the end of life on some of these systems are several years ago.
Yeah.
So that means that the ATM machine, which is the dealership, which has all of the data, which is worth probably millions of dollars, I would think,
Potentially, yeah.
your insurance company is going to say to you, hey, you know what? You guys didn't spend the money to upgrade your system, and because of your willful negligence, we're not on the hook.
Right. So cybersecurity insurance is not a substitute for cybersecurity. And too many believe that. And there are tremendous gaps in the coverage. Again, it is absolutely necessary, but the gaps can be overwhelming, and they will find a reason not to pay if you are not actively engaged, again, in vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, generally done via managed security service providers, or again, your internal IT people. And your internal IT people better have a clue, they better be credentialed, and they better know what's going on. And it's always good to have a third party to come in and even audit them.
Well, here's the funny thing, right? So I've been in the dealer world for 38 years in the business. And of the stores that I've worked in, I don't ever remember anybody coming in and analyzing a network.
Yeah. You know, I'm looking at an article right now. Automotive cybersecurity incidents doubled in 2019, up 605% since 2016. So what I'm seeing is, and many others are seeing, a huge uptick in fraud geared towards manufacturers, towards construction, the real estate industry, automotive, many of which aren't making the necessary investments in their hardware, their software, and or their people. They're not engaged in ongoing security awareness training. They're not spending the necessary resources. They're not allocating the necessary funds towards making sure that not only are their hardware, software, their networks properly protected, but the people on the inside are, somewhat immune to human hacking. And we're just not seeing that right now. And therefore, huge amounts of money are being lost to wire transfer fraud. Somebody
Really?
Huge. Real estate is a big one. I think it's about 160 million just in the past couple of years. Mortgage closing scams. I mean, any industry where there are large sums of funds being transferred from one entity to another. Manufacturing is huge, so paying all your suppliers, paying your vendors, buying and selling product.
It's a big bogus bills, or
So it's bogus bills. So right here, we're on LinkedIn. Any one of you right now could do a quick search for Mattel, Mattel, right? Mattel Corporation. And as we know, like, they make Barbie dolls and all kinds of kids' toys. And right on the first page, when you search Mattel, you're going to find, the executive vice president of purchasing. You're going to find the CISO. You're going to find, a lot of big fish from the Mattel Corporation as soon as you do a quick search in LinkedIn, right? Now, as a bad guy, if I chose to set up an account posing as a Mattel employee, LinkedIn doesn't recognize that, and neither does Mattel. Like, anybody can do that. And so now what will happen next is, LinkedIn will start to suggest all the different people that work for Mattel that I would connect with.
and because it's such a big company, you might not physically meet them, but they see an email address. They could think that you're part of the company.
Right. And who do we do business with? We do business with those who we know, who we like, and who we trust. And our coworkers are people who we may not necessarily know. We might not necessarily like them, but we have no reason to dislike them. But because they're a coworker, we have reasons to trust them, because we kind of need to, because they're our coworker.
Right.
And so the bad guy sets up a profile as a LinkedIn, as a Mattel employee, and he begins to contact people in purchasing, people in manufacturing, trying to get lists of vendors, trying to get lists of the people on the inside that are responsible for purchasing. And once the bad guy gathers enough intelligence, enough information to put all the pieces together, he then poses as a vendor and contacts somebody in purchasing and sends out a fake invoice.
Wow.
That is entirely possible, and it can result in potentially millions of dollars in losses if it's not picked up properly.
And they get so many bills, calls. If you drop a few names on the call, how are they going to know?
Google and Facebook have lost hundreds of millions of dollars just in the past decade with the exact same scam. And they can afford it, they can absorb it. But when it happens to small and medium businesses, $100,000 is significant. A $500,000, $1 million could easily bankrupt somebody. And it doesn't have to be like that. If companies would just take a step back and do a simple risk analysis and determine what are our initial hardware and software vulnerabilities. You do that by, again, and I've mentioned it and I'll keep talking about it, is you bring in a penetration tester. A penetration tester is a white hat hacker. These are professionals that understand technology a little bit better than the most of us, and they also are engaged in human hacking. No penetration testing is done fully automated. It is always boots on the ground. They may come into your place of business posing as a firefighter in uniform to get somewhere inside the facility and maybe plug in thumb drives that are infected into the network to gain remote access into the network once they're outside the building. They may sit outside of your building looking at the Wi-Fi, trying to hack into the Wi-Fi to get access to the network. They will send off phishing emails to everybody in the network, from the top down, the bottom up, the salespeople to the CEO to HR and accounting, to see who clicks the link, to see who provides sensitive information. They pick up the phone and they see if they can get passwords from people, or to find out who is in charge of operations. They'll even find out who's your managed security service provider and contact them and pose as the dealership, saying we have a problem with our system, and maybe try to scam the MSSP. Like, they'll do anything and everything to hack humans, to gather more intelligence, to be able to get inside your networks. And there's no way that a mom and pop dealership can possibly fend off an attack when there's millions of dollars at stake.
Wow.
Unless they engage in security professionals who do this for a living, that their entire job is to counteract what the bad guy's entire motivation is.
And here's the thing, at a dealership, you have what, 50, 60 people working there sometimes, right? It's very easy to get into a store. If somebody's dressed sharply, they walk in, maybe they have a fake badge. How hard is it to access a computer? All the computers are out in the open. As a matter of fact, most of the time, if you go to the desk, on the monitor is taped all of the accounts plus all of the passwords. Why? Because you've got to change them.
Yeah.
there's so many different logins, they can't remember them. How hard is it for somebody to walk there, take a picture of it, and then leave and then hack in later?
Yeah, and even a cleaning crew who might come into the dealership after hours. So you probably trust your cleaning crew. You've had them for so many years, and you're confident that they're not going to be rifling through drawers and this and that, right? But what is to stop a cleaning crew employee from, say, plugging a thumb drive into the back of any desktop? Thumb drives today,
Or the server.
or the server, a thumb drive today can have a destructive payload that will infect that machine the moment it's plugged in. In addition to that, a key logging device, you can Google key logger on Amazon, and you'll find for $50 a key logger that you plug into the back of a desktop via USB that will record like 4,000 pages of text. And that is enough information that keylogger could be plugged in there for months at a time.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Because there's dust bunnies behind the desktop that
Yeah.
nobody's paying attention to, and there's all these peripherals and everything sticking in and out. Once you plug that keylogger in, the bad guy piggybacks the keyboard on top of the keylogger, and everything that somebody plugs into the keyboard all day long, websites visited, usernames and passwords typed
Right.
in, email sent and typed and received, all of that information ends up in the keylogger device, and then once unplugged, bad guy just reviews the file.
That's it.
And he'll, maybe even use additional software to scan through to do some keyword searches for it. And ultimately, the bad guy has access to anything and everything that device had access to over the course of a week, a month, or whatever the case might be.
And that's as simple as walking into the store, finding a computer, and they're all out in the open, plugging it in, and walking away.
Yeah, and most dealerships are inviting. It's an atmosphere where coffee's being served, snacks are being set out on tables. You sit people at your desk. They're filling out paperwork. You might walk away, make a quick phone call, go to the restroom. Your desktop's sitting right there, your laptop's sitting right there, and no one is thinking that there is somebody on site who has bad intentions. Everyone's thinking this person's here to buy, they're here for service. We want to trust people, and we should trust people. We have to trust people, but you can't think for 1 second that everybody is to be trusted, that everybody that walks in is okay, that no one's ever going to have any bad intentions. That is just unrealistic. And so if you don't know what to look out for, if you don't have systems in place, if you don't provide security awareness training as to what to be aware of, hardware to look for on the outside of the device, scans on the network, on the laptops and desktops, if you're not engaged in ongoing security awareness training, vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, you may already have been compromised.
And now here's the thing, right? Small companies, I don't even think they budget for it. Bigger companies, I work for giant companies, okay? And one time, the last company I worked for them for a couple of years. One time, I had training on phishing scams and things like that, and what to and what not to click on. But that's one time.
One time.
You're suggesting should be an ongoing process that occurs. How often is it? Quarterly?
So phishing simulation is a relatively new tool, a little bit, I think, less than a decade old, maybe about a decade old, and there have been some great strides made in phishing simulation training. It used to be.
Thanks, Paolo.
It used to be just scare people, and today it is more inform and educate and reassure. This is what you did, is if you click that link, this is what you need to be aware of in the future, and next time you do it, contact this person or do this or don't do that. It's much more intuitive. That said, phishing simulation should be an ongoing process that never ever goes away. You don't do phishing simulation once. You do it on a regular basis. Generally, your people should be phished at a minimum quarterly.
Absolute minimum, yeah.
In some cases, it's being done weekly, depending on the nature of the industry.
Sure.
So But phishing simulation is really just one part of the security awareness strategy. So what I find, and I speak throughout the country, I speak into a number of different industries. I'm doing 60, 80 presentations a year in front of thousands of people. Phishing simulation for most people is actually a little more advanced than most consumers, employees are capable of understanding. So the phishing is really just one component of cybersecurity, of security awareness. And while it's an important component, and it's all often the biggest risk that companies face, employees won't care about security awareness or protecting the data in which they are entrusted with, or even care about phishing simulation training until they understand the fundamentals of personal security as it relates to protecting their own identities, as it relates to protecting their children and their spouse and their own bank accounts. Because we are a selfish, self-interested creature, and we will not spend all our time, energy, and effort protecting somebody else's information until we understand how to protect ours first.
Right.
So what I do when I provide security awareness training is I start with the individual. I start with the employee. I give them an opportunity to ask, and I provide answers to any and all questions that they have regarding their own information, their own social security number, their own credit card numbers, their own data, their kids' information. Because once they understand that, the basics, then they are in a much better position to understand how to protect the data in which they are entrusted with. I take them from security awareness to what I call security appreciation. And security awareness is head-based. Like, we understand security. Like, we know what it is, and we know what we're supposed to do. We should lock our doors. We should have a home security system, and all these different things. But security appreciation is actually doing something about it. It's actually locking your doors. It's actually getting that home security system. It's actually investing in identity theft protection. It's actually getting a credit freeze. It's actually protecting your kid's identity. It's actually doing it's actually paying for antivirus. Like, it's actually doing all the different things that you should be doing in order to protect yourself and your family and your small business. And then once people understand that security really isn't that big of a deal, it's not really all that hard, it's something that's easily attainable if you have basic systems in place, then they become in a much better position to recognize risk and deal with phishing, and when the phone rings, and if somebody comes in posing as a firefighter, how to deal with that as well.
Right, and to not just blindly say, okay, here it is, to actually ask questions, right? Now, we talk about phishing scams, which is part of a whole bigger, ugly picture, but there's something that a lot of people don't even know about or think about, and that's ransomware, right?
Yes.
So now imagine this. Imagine you click on something, that virus or Trojan horse now takes over your system and locks it down unless you send X amount of tens of thousands of dollars to some offshore account via Bitcoin, which will never be traced again.
Right.
I mean, from what, and you probably know a whole lot more about it than me, but from what I've seen, school systems and other large institutions have been shut down. And when they go to the feds say, you know what? We can't do anything about it.
Once the money's gone, the money's gone. So the study I'm looking at right now, most incidents of cybercrime in the automotive industry, 57% in 2019 were carried out by cybercriminals to disrupt businesses, steal property, and demand ransom. Only 38% were the result of researches with the goal of warning companies and consumers of discovered vulnerabilities in the vehicles themselves. So, almost 2/3 of all targeted attacks were for fraud purposes, many of which are ransomware. Now, as far as ransomware is concerned, you should never even get ransomware if your devices are properly updated, properly protected. If you're in, at a minimum, say Windows 10, and you're using a third-party antivirus, anti-spyware, anti-phishing, and a firewall. If you're on updated, newer Mac devices, and we're talking just like basic stuff. Generally, you'll have hardware in place as external firewalls that will have a much more robust level of security. security. If you're doing all the necessary updates for your critical security patches in your servers, in your laptops and desktops, you should never even see ransomware. But if you're functioning in an older, legacy devices, if you have older laptops, older desktops, again, Windows 7, even Windows 8 for that matter, the operating systems haven't been properly updated. If you're using older browsers, an older version of Internet Explorer that hasn't been updated.
But how many people don't update their software?
If you're not regularly updating everything, so understand this right now, what updates are, right? And if I can use use a car as an example. So if you're driving a vehicle over time, the brakes wear out, the tires wear out, and you're going to have to replace a number of different parts because they become safety issues, right? Same thing with belts dry out and plugs or fuel injectors or whatever. Things need to be cleaned out, replaced. And if you're not maintaining that vehicle, it becomes hazardous. Which
Right.
fundamentally you have to get a sticker every year to make sure that there aren't any safety issues or vulnerabilities with that vehicle. Because if you were not required to get a sticker, then your car would probably end up hurting you or somebody else eventually.
Right.
Because most people would just let the tires go bald and they wouldn't take care of it. Because people are lazy like that. That's why we're required by law to get a sticker. But when it comes to computer hardware, software, we don't have those same restrictions, those same requirements, unless you look at certain federal laws that say if you are in fact breached, then you're facing a number of different fines, state and federal laws. That said, there's nobody like monitoring that and forcing you to do it, on a regular basis. So if you were to maintain the updates, which basically are the tires and brakes for the computer, for the network, you would find that the point and purpose of them is not just so that your software plays well together and it functions like it's supposed to. It's to patch or protect you from vulnerabilities that were discovered either by researchers, the manufacturers, or by criminals. Those vulnerabilities could be like, Toyota has a recall on 100,000 airbags because the airbags had a flaw in them.
Yeah.
And they were hurting people, they weren't deploying. It's the same thing. That's a flaw, that's a vulnerability in the airbag. They have to be replaced, and go back to the dealership. It's the same thing with hardware and software. It needs an update. It requires an update. We see it in the actual, motherboard, the computer of the car itself. Occasionally, they find vulnerabilities in the car itself, and it has to be updated as well.
Now, here's the thing. At a car dealership, there's not much in the way of maintenance that happens. Okay? The mentality of most dealerships, and I've only worked in a few of them, but of the ones I've worked in, there's no proactive maintenance program. Basically, when something stops working, that's when the IT guy comes moseying in and replaces a component. Okay? When I worked in stores, I taught myself how to fix computers, how to upgrade them. I would go in and I would find out that basic stuff has never been done to it. Defrag, system cleanup, software programs not updated, antivirus not updated. And a lot of this stuff can be set to automatic so that you don't have to remember to do it. But you need to at least have your IT team make sure that they maintain the equipment. But in most dealerships, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and if you have 50, 60 employees, the basics of updating your software and updating your operating system, and that may not necessarily work when you have an enterprise that large. Usually, you're going to need to bring in a team of experts to remotely manage your network, your systems, because it's much more robust. That's more than any one individual can possibly keep updated. And you're going to need to upgrade hardware every 3 to 5 years as well. And having one individual manage that process is generally too overwhelming for someone. That individual is going to miss something. Usually in, say, like in a municipality, you would have a managed information security director, and he'll have an assistant, and they'll work for the entire town. And that might just be like City Hall, and maybe they might have somebody that works in the water department, and maybe in the electrical department. They might have additional hardware they have to attend to, and that generally isn't enough. And that's why you see municipalities right now being some of the biggest targets in the world, in the country, for phishing attacks and for ransomware attacks, because they simply don't have the manpower or the resources financially to update all the necessary hardware and software to make sure that they're properly protected. Therefore, the money that they think they're saving on keeping older devices running, they're losing ultimately when they're attacked. The city of Atlanta had ransomware on their network. They were there was a $55,000 or so demand for ransom, and instead of paying the ransom, the city of Atlanta, I think they paid $2.3 million to update their entire system, which congratulations to them. Whereas a municipality in Florida, I think that they paid $600,000 to avoid having to spend $1 million on updating their networks. I could be wrong about the $1 million, but I know about the $600,000. All of that plays out for the dealerships as well. You have to make these necessary investments now, or you're going to pay later.
It's just mind-boggling that kind of stuff goes on. And everything's computer now. Everything's connected now. Cars are connected. Homes are connected. You can, via the internet, you can turn on your appliances in your house. You can turn on your lights in your house. I mean, there are so many vulnerabilities. People's cars. I mean, there's scanning devices. I think there's some kind of scanning devices that people use to get your codes or your keys. I'm not.
So there are a number of automotive type hacks where keyless entry is compromised. Basically anything that is wireless, whether it's Wi-Fi or a Bluetooth connection, there is hardware that can defeat it. The beauty is that we have researchers out there that focus specifically on the industry. They are paid bounties when they discover these vulnerabilities, and the automotive industry, technology industries in general, finance industries will provide a bounty when these vulnerabilities are discovered. These researchers then make a concerted effort to essentially discover those vulnerabilities, because that's how they feed their family. So there's an opportunity there for them. A decade ago, bounties weren't necessarily a thing, and if somebody was to hack a car or to hack a bank or to hack a company or a technology company, whatever it might be, they might be arrested. Today, as long as there's an actual bounty in place and the vulnerability is discovered, usually they're awarded, which is a good thing. So while we know that vulnerabilities have been discovered where remotely researchers have been able to tap the brakes, they've been able to tap the gas, they've been able to turn the steering wheel, turn the heat on and off, the radio on and off, like that's kind of scary. Manipulating the steering wheel from a distance is really scary. I mean, today, like, there isn't even a cable between the gas and the carburetor. There isn't even a carburetor. It's all sensors. It's all completely electronic. And all of that, all of those electronics, when there's wireless involved, all can be remotely accessed and activated. The same thing can be done in airplanes.
I heard about that.
And it has been done from inside the planes. Yes. So, but it's not something to worry about. It is something definitely to be aware of. Your manufacturers, they're on it. I mean, they need to be. Researchers may argue that point, but your dealerships really are ultimately the low-hanging fruit. They're the ones that the criminals are going after primarily, because that's where the bad guy can make his most money.
Now, any questions? Do any of you have any questions on some of the things that we're talking about here? Because a lot of it is new for some, and others that, I hate to say paranoid, I like to think of cautious.
Aware.
right? A lot of people leave their, I have a friend who is a detective in town, and he tells me that a lot of break-ins happen both in homes and in cars because people just, they don't lock their doors or they don't lock their cars. What type of questions? Any questions out there regarding cybersecurity and how it affects your dealership that we haven't covered? Paolo said there's a good video, Ransomware Anatomy of an Attack. I'll have to watch that video. Is that on probably on YouTube?
Study up.
There's a lot of information on the internet about it.
There's a ton. What's really good is to have a focused cybersecurity training event. So whether you do an annual, semi-annual at your local or state or regional or national association, champion for bringing in experts to speak to the fundamentals first and foremost. Personal security as it relates to protecting identities, protecting the information in which you are entrusted with. And then from there, recognizing risk on a daily basis, evolving from security awareness to security appreciation, recognizing that security is fundamental to living at this point. On the hierarchy of human needs, like at the base of the triangle, is eating, sleeping, and drinking. It's like fundamental, right?
And bacon.
And bacon, agreed. It's fundamental to living. That's part of the eating, right? But then right above that is safety, security, stability, structure, and protection. Like without that, you can't function.
Right.
And I mentioned this earlier. We are an interdependent species. We require trust. Okay, we have to trust. I have to trust that you're not going to knife me right now. Or, I have to trust that the person sitting next to me, the person driving down the road, has good intentions.
He's in better shape than me, so I wouldn't mess with this guy.
But the point is, you have to just trust people, and that's a good thing. It's being civil towards each other. But the problem here is that the bad guys know this, and they twist the truth just a little bit, and so everything seems completely legit until it's not, and that not part can be offset by all the other stuff in that email or that phone call that seems legit. Even though it doesn't feel right, you go with it anyways. And the majority of the time when people are victimized, when companies are victimized, the person who was ultimately scammed, they say, I knew something was wrong before I clicked that link or before I gave up that information. They knew it. And it's a matter of trusting your own instincts, but in order to do that, you have to evolve from security awareness to security appreciation, and that requires a fundamental change in behavior, one in which cannot be done by basic phishing simulation alone. It requires boots on the ground, getting in front of a trained communicator that can speak in a way and answer questions in a way that people fully understand the value that security provides them.
Now, Mike had brought up the point about VPNs, all right? Now, when you go anywhere, cellular is slower to upload your stuff to social media, so people look for free Wi-Fi.
Yep.
All right?
I love free Wi-Fi.
Now, free Wi-Fi may not necessarily be Wi-Fi from the business that you're visiting. It could be a Wi-Fi that a cybercriminal has set up to mimic that business, for you to log into their Wi-Fi, for them to then scan your software to get at your data.
That is called an evil twin. And an evil twin is certainly a malicious network that once you connect to, all your data goes through to the bad guy.
All of it.
All of it. Now, even on basic free unencrypted Wi-Fi at the hotel, the airport, internet cafe, out and about, your data is still vulnerable. The key to protecting and preventing any data sniffing, packets of data going through the air being sniffed up by criminals, is use a VPN. A VPN is a virtual private network software. If you do a quick search on Google for VPN, or virtual private network, you'll find all kinds of ads in the first page of search. You'll find a bunch of free ones and paid ones in the first page of search. Generally, what I recommend that people do is, first and foremost, you should pay for a VPN. The same way you should pay for antivirus.
Yeah.
But what I do suggest that people do is download the free version to try it. See if
Okay.
you like it, okay? It might be a little bit slower, it might be ad supported. Try the free version and see if you like it. Because if you don't like it, you can always uninstall it and try another free version. And ultimately what I find happens is within a day or a week, maybe even a month, they're gonna offer you, upsell you, cross-sell you a suite of products or the VPN itself for 80% off of what it might cost you if you were just to download it and buy it first day, right? So I like to save a couple of bucks, download the free version, wait for them to provide you steep discounts, and then make your investment, see if you like it first.
So with a VPN, rather than just send your packets of data through the air, it's like a tunnel.
It's a tunnel, exactly. So you are going through the server of the virtual private network. It could be in the US, it could be overseas, and basically that's an encrypted tunnel, so your information is properly protected from internet service providers, from government agencies, and from criminal hackers.
Now, how does one know if it's a legit company with so much fake stuff out there?
Yeah, so I get asked that question a lot. Usually on the very first page of search, it takes a tremendous amount of effort for a company to make the first page of search. Now certainly a thing called black hat hacking or black hat SEO is possible, but usually that's only possible when A, you are searching like nefarious type content, such as, I don't know, 15-year-old naked photos. Chances are, first page of search, you're going to get a virus and you probably deserve it. Otherwise, if you're searching, say, how to get a free VPN, the more words you plug into that search query, the less legit companies are going to show up on the first page of search. So limit your search query to 2 to 3, maybe 4 words, and you generally, the majority of the time, end up with a legit search query on the first page of search. Again, companies spend a lot of their resources to get there. Therefore, if you search VPN, virtual private network, you're going to find legit VPNs on the first page of search, including ads.
Now, Mike's question is, I got my credit frozen. Do I need identity theft protection and a VPN for my phone and or laptop?
Okay, so yes, I have. I use a Mac. I'm a PC guy for 15 years, and I will never go down that road again. I am all Mac at this point, and I use a VPN. I use what's called Hotspot Shield. They've been a client for many years. I at one point had their free version. Now I have their paid version. And whenever I'm on my Mac, I'm at a client site, a hotel, I'm at the airport, internet cafe, whatever the case is, my VPN's launched. I also have it on my iPhone as well. Now, if I am on my 4G, 5G LTE connection, you don't necessarily need the VPN. Your LTE carrier connection is encrypted. It's hard to crack that. Can it be done? Yeah, but it's unlikely. So if you're on Wi-Fi, yes, definitely you need the VPN.
And it says here, Paolo's question, why are most business owners afraid to leave their Johnny the Ponytail IT guy they've had forever? It's a fear of change, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, Johnny's got a wife and kids and he needs a job and there's a relationship there. But even Johnny needs to be audited because he can get lazy. I think all employees, if they aren't audited at some level, if you don't light a fire under them, they will get lazy. I mean, it's just human nature. And so you want to audit your IT people because, especially if you've had them for a long time, if they're comfortable in their job and they're not making an effort to research new vulnerabilities, new scams, that if they're searching porn all day long and they're not really, there's no fire under them, there's no reason for them to further investigate their networks and what might go wrong, then you're setting yourself up for failure. I mean, it's just human nature. It's just the way people are. They get lazy.
Well, a lot of times the people in the store don't understand the technology, right? There's usually one guy that knows it, but nobody else does.
Yeah, and that's not okay. You definitely want to bring in a third party. Look, I find in life that the majority of us learn the most through pain.
True.
We just do. It's just unfortunate. It takes, significant emotional events for us to change our ways, to see the light, to make change in our lives and in our businesses. You don't want pain to be the reason why you make investments in your business in regards to information security. You want to be proactive, and security is all about taking control and being proactive in making those investments. And I guarantee you, if you were to contact my company, any company that offers phishing simulation, we would do a phishing simulation training for you, right, for free, right? One phishing simulation training for free, and we will phish all your people. And I will guarantee you that we will get people to click links that could ultimately compromise your network, that would share passwords, or they download something that would install malware on your network. Like, we would simulate that process to show you just how vulnerable you are. And if you're not actively engaged in that level of penetration testing, coupled with vulnerability scanning, then you're not changing the brakes. You're not, putting on new tires. You're not putting in good gas. You're not changing your belts. You're setting up to break down on the side of the road in the Badlands in South Dakota.
Now, the dealership is contemplating with whether or not to spend the money to do this. While they're contemplating, the criminals who see this as a business enterprise, it's nothing personal, it's just a business.
It's a business.
They are continually, around the clock, looking for new vulnerabilities. Just as like McAfee and Norton and Symantec and some of these other companies, they employ people to look for vulnerabilities. Okay? These guys discover problems. Sometimes, a lot of times, the bad guys will discover the vulnerability before the good guys. And that's when they come out with patches later.
Well, that's it. And bad guys are scanning for vulnerabilities 24/7, 365. And if you're not scanning your network, you can be guaranteed that somebody is. So understand a bit about MSSPs, Managed Security Service Providers. And you're not going to necessarily go with a McAfee or a Symantec or another really big company to do that for you. You might go with a VCISO, a virtual CISO. And I can certainly point you in a direction for people that are much more affordable than like big companies. So what they do is, they do cybersecurity monitoring and management. They manage your firewall. They are engaged in intrusion detection. They provide virtual private networks. They do their own vulnerability scanning by using known tools. Bad guys use the exact same tools. So if your MSSP isn't doing a vulnerability scan, the bad guys are. They provide antiviral services, spam blocking, 24/7 security services. They will engage in system changes and updates and modifications and upgrades. And ultimately, they reduce the number of operational security personnel. So they may not necessarily put Johnny out of a job, but they could. But at a minimum, they're going to put Johnny Ponytail in check so that he's doing his job that much better.
Correct.
And ultimately, MSSPs can reduce hiring and training and retaining, saving money. I mean, and making you money down the road, because you will lose money if you have downtime. If you are engaged in an attack where ransomware is involved, you could be down for days, weeks. It could bankrupt you depending on the nature of the hack.
And you might not have the money to pay, and they don't really care because it's just something electronic that they can just lock you down until you come up with the money, or you're just out. Now, Ken has a question here. He says, how could a person scan your device from a free Wi-Fi even if you may not be visiting your bank or example?
Okay, so the various banks of the websites that we visit have HTTPS, which means basically it's a secure site that we're visiting. Although not all sites have security on the other end. So when you are on Wi-Fi, basically figure it like this: like there are what's called packets of data going through the air, going through the Wi-Fi, from your device via your router and or modem, through the internet, wired connection eventually, to the server in which your bank is on. That data can be sniffed out. It all can be received with hardware. So I know it might be difficult to see how that might work, but it's kind of like if you remember Star Trek, Beam Me Up, Scotty, how bits and pieces of the human would evaporate in one area and then it would appear in the other. Well, consider there's packets of that human going from one place to the other. When Scotty's beaming others up, it's packets of data going from one place to the other in a similar fashion, as odd as that example might be.
And that's easily detectable.
Oh, certainly, yeah. I mean, obviously, if you can detect it from one device to the other, if you can do a quick share of information, from one device to the other wirelessly, there's packets of information being communicated. That's just how it works. It's computer science beyond this conversation's capabilities.
Now, just because you're not using your bank at that particular moment doesn't mean anything, because how many people don't have passwords stored on their device?
Yeah, and password management is a big one too, because if you are using the same password across multiple accounts, if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or princess or password 1 as a password anywhere, it's just a matter of time. If you're not already hacked, you will be hacked. It is entirely necessary to use a password manager. A password manager, although people are always worried that a password manager is going to get hacked, I'm not worried about my password manager getting hacked. I'm more worried about people using the same password across multiple accounts. That is the low-hanging fruit. Because I said this at the beginning of the show, that there have been 20 billion records compromised in the past decade, and all of our usernames and passwords are out there for the downloading by criminals who have posted them everywhere. That said, your credentials are out there. Bad guys just need to log in to your available online credentials that have already been stolen. Having the same password across all your websites makes it very easy for the bad guy essentially to just simply log in, which is where a password manager comes in that allows a different password across all of your critical accounts, uppercase, lowercase, numbers and characters. I don't bother with phrases, any of that stuff. Like, I'm looking at my password manager right now and it generates a password, uppercase R, lowercase L, ampersand, exclamation point, pound sign, uppercase N, little O, N, T, exclamation point. Good luck remembering that. But you don't have to remember it, because your password manager remembers it for you. The same way your mobile phone remembers phone numbers for you. Frankly, I can't tell you my mother's phone number. It's mom, as far as I know. My mobile phone remembers it for me.
Now, does that change the passwords automatically?
So the way a password manager works essentially is, once you have one installed on your device via your browser, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge, once it's installed, you begin to train it to know and recognize all the passwords of all the existing sites that you have a relationship with. So when you visit a site, you plug in the username and password, the password manager asks if you want it to remember that site, and you have it remember that site. Over time, I suggest that people go in and begin to update their passwords.
Okay.
So if you're using lame, easy to guess, easy to crack, or the same passwords across multiple accounts, you begin to change the passwords at the website itself, and then you have the password manager remember that new password.
Oh, wow.
That's how that works. And the password manager will generate a password for you to plug in to the site as you change them. Or as you sign up for brand new sites, you intimately involve the password manager when you sign up for that brand new site.
Now, a lot of times people use either, I think it's the facial recognition, which is basically a picture.
Yep.
Right? Or a thumbprint.
Yep.
Is that something that's hackable as well?
So that's to access your device itself, right? So
Yeah.
that's access control. So as far as access control is concerned, I'm all for biometrics. I'm all for, fingerprint, iris, facial recognition to access your mobile phone, as long as you have a password, as long as you have, something to log in to protect your device. Absolutely. Not having a password is irresponsible for your mobile device. Same thing with your laptop and desktop. Access control there could be biometrics. It could be a password itself. As long as it's password protected, generally you're fine there.
Now, Mike says, I'm on Verizon and they offer a paid service for VPN and identity theft protection. Is it a bad idea to use the same company I already have for additional services like these? If my credit is frozen, do I really need identity theft protection? So
as far as the same company, that's all fine. Having your data in one place, I recognize there's a concern there, but I'm not too worried about that. Verizon's a pretty top-notch organization, by the way. They do some significant cybersecurity training themselves and provide managed security service themselves. As far as whether you need identity theft protection and a credit freeze, I have both. Okay, I enjoy a credit freeze as the fundamental way to protect my identity from new account fraud. A credit freeze is something you get at the 3 major credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. As long as your credit's frozen, it prevents a bad guy in general from opening up new lines of credit under your name. Now, a credit freeze is easy to get and it's free. You do a quick search at the 3 credit bureaus for credit freeze and you'll find a page to go about going through that process. So get yourself a credit freeze now. Identity theft protection, I think, is necessary. It may not have the robust protection that a freeze does in regards to locking lenders out of their credit report, but some identity theft protection will monitor applications for credit in real time and alert you if your credit is being accessed in real time. That's a nice feature. Not all identity theft protection services do that. Many of them will monitor your credit and tell you after the account was open, and then they'll come in and fix it after that had occurred. All that being said, the beauty and benefit of identity theft protection is the restoration component that they provide. So their restoration agents generally are professionals that understand medical identity theft, criminal identity theft, tax-related identity theft, various forms of identity theft that the identity theft protection services themselves may not protect you from. But they have their restorations agents there to work with you and facilitate the process of restoring a compromised identity should it happen. You know, look at for 10, 15 bucks a month, I think it's worth it to have multiple layers of protection. In security, we talk about layers of protection all the time. The more layers you have, the more secure you're going to be.
No, I mean that's key, because and the frozen part is great, because if you don't have it frozen, it usually isn't until the bills start coming in that people even realize they've been compromised. How many people look at their report monthly?
Well,
most don't.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. If you're not paying attention to your credit card statements, frankly, no offense, I find that to be irresponsible. I suggest that everybody engage at a minimum in what's called push alerts or push notifications. So push alerts and push notifications are notifications that you set up with your credit card company that you get an email or a text every single time there's a charge. It's easy to do. Log into your credit card company and tool around in the menu section and look for, alerts and notifications. And I check every single box, meaning that I want to know every charge, below or above $1.
Yeah.
I want to know every card present, every card not present charge, international charges. I share a credit card with my wife, and she was driving the kids to school one day, and I get text messages from American Express. There were charges going on as we speak at Whole Foods. And so I call her while she's driving the kids to school and I say, hey, are you at Whole Foods? She's like, no. I'm like, did you order anything online at Whole Foods lately? She's like, no. I go, when was the last time you were at Whole Foods? She's like, 2 months ago. Why? I go, because we just got 2 charges at Whole Foods at 7 o'clock in the morning. She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I called American Express. They took the charges right off. Somebody got our card number, probably in a different data breach. That being said, if I was not getting push notifications from American Express text messages, chances are I would not have refuted those charges because, it was $17 and $18 at Whole Foods on my wife's card and she shops at Whole Foods. I probably wouldn't have thought anything of it. I might not even have made that necessary effort to question her on it.
A lot of times, it'll be $1 charge just to make sure it goes through.
Right.
Another $1 charge, and then big charges happen. I was having dinner. I spend a lot of time in the field. I'm having dinner in Massachusetts, and I have all the alerts set on my cards. So anything that gets charged, I get notified. I get a text message that my card was just hit at a parking garage in New Hampshire. Well, guess what? I'm having dinner in Massachusetts. Before the bank even called me, I called the bank and I had them lock down the card and had another card on the way the next day. So that's something that it costs you nothing. It's a few minutes investment in time to log into your online accounts and set up all those alerts.
And it's a layer of protection that I find I can't live without. I love it. I love knowing what's going on. I get a text message, $199 charged at Sally Beauty. And I know it's not me that went to Sally Beauty. I text my wife, I'm like, honey, are you at Sally Beauty? She's like, yeah, that's me. Leave me alone, I gotta go. And I know it was her. And I'm fine with her spending the money at Sally Beauty. I just want to know it was her that made the
Right.
charge.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Ken checks his monthly, if not more.
Yep.
And he says that Amex is very good about that. A lot of the card companies, you know, the other day I was renewing one of my software accounts online, and it got declined. I'm like, why is that declined? Sure enough, I look at my phone, I get a text message, did you just try to renew this software? Type yes. I typed yes. They said wait 5 minutes and then process it again and it'll go through.
You know, and all this being said, keep in mind, like, credit card fraud ultimately is the least of your worries. Like, it really is, in my opinion, a non-issue. And the reason why I say that is because as long as you're paying attention to your statements and you refute those charges that are fraudulent charges, you're fine. Like, that goes away pretty quickly. The biggest problem when it comes to personal identity is new account fraud. And new account fraud
Right.
is when they get your social and they open up new lines of credit under your name. That is the biggest issue. That can be protected, often prevented by a credit freeze and also another layer, getting identity theft protection. Along with, you know, password management, updating your devices, and you got to do it for your kids too. Your kids' credit needs to be frozen as well. It's not enough to just freeze your credit. You got to freeze your credit, your parents' credit, elderly. You got to freeze your mom and dad's credit, and your kids' credit as well. The kids' credit process is a little more manual than the adult process, and I actually own a company where we freeze kids' credit for the parents for a very small fee.
Awesome. All right, well, listen, we went a little bit over time, but I appreciate everybody being on. Hopefully, we all learned a little bit something from Robert here about cybersecurity and the dangers that are out there. And any questions, feel free. You can message myself or Robert. He's really the expert. So if you need advice, you can connect with him directly on LinkedIn, or you can message through me, whatever works for you. So thank you very much for watching. And we'll see you on the next show. Robert, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.